my name is Jing, and today, along with my partner Summer, we're going to talk about drama translation as well as our experience of translating Frankenstein. And our presentation is mainly consists of three parts. First, I will give a brief overview of drama translation as well as some strategies for drama translation. Later, my partner Summer will introduce our experience of translating Frankenstein. Alright. So drama is one of the oldest art in the world's literature. However, its translation has not been neglected, and there are even some misunderstandings like drama translation. The strategy is exactly the same to prose translation, which is not true. And as Susan Basnett once put it, a theater text is read differently. It is read as something incomplete rather than as fully rounded unit, since it is only in performance that the full potential of the text is realized. So we emphasize the performability. Alright, and some studies have discussed the principles for drama translation. In 1969, Hamburg mentioned that spoken lines in drama must characterize the speaker, time, space, and the social class, and it must be unambiguous, lead the audience attention in the desired direction. Easy and natural dialogue is essential in dramatic translation to avoid lines that sound unnatural. And he also highlights that entrance in these lines requires special attention from translators. Moving into the 1970s, Gravier in 1973, he mentioned that allusions in the dramatic text should be clear and easily understood when being translated. Also, archaic grammatical structure should be avoided, and inverted question forms are generally not acceptable. Also, drama translators, they can learn from the techniques used in the cinema dubbing, which requires careful attention to lip movement for accurate translation. And as we can see on the screen, the book titled The Language of Theater, Programs in the Translation and the Transposition of Drama, edited by Zuber, was claimed to be the first book uniquely focused on the distinctive issues encountered in drama translation. And Zuber highlights in this book that if the translator does not appropriately transpose the complex network of symbolic size into the target culture, such as visual, acoustic, and linguistic size, there is a risk of distorting and misinterpreting the meaning of a play. Also, in his another edited book, Page to Stage, Theater as Translation, Zuber highlights that it would be very ideal to see translators be present at rehearsals and participate in the discussion and work on the transferring the written translation on the stage. Okay, and in 1981, Will was talk about that dramatic translator needs to understand the speech patterns and recreate tensions without altering the playwright's intention. The translator should be cautious of excessive sibilant of awkward consonantal clusters that may affect pronunciation. As a result, the translator should read the translation to someone unfamiliar with the play, and preferably an actor. Alright, so in 1988, Peter Newmark in the book, in a textbook of translation, he pointed out the main purpose of translating the play is normally to have it performed successfully. Therefore, a translator of drama inevitably has to bear the potential spectator in mind. The better written and more significant the text, the fewer compromises he can make in favor of the reader. And he also talked about the constraints of drama translation. The first one is that translators cannot gross express puns or ambiguity or cultural references, nor transcribe words for the sake of local color. For example, in the play Hamlet, there is an English line saying something is rotten in the state of Denmark. And here the word rotten can be interpreted as something is rotten physically, or you can mean like the rotten politics. And if a translator come across such a sentence in prose or in an article, he can easily make a footnote to explain that. However, in drama translation, the translator cannot do that. And because the text is dramatic with emphasis on verbs rather than descriptive and explanatory. Alright, so now let's go for the strategies for drama translation. So in 1980s, Link put forward some strategies of drama translation in levels of speech. So they are involved with different aspects such as contemporary speech, poetic language, non-poetic language, dialect, and archaic language. To be more specific, so in order to render all the text to comprehensible to present-day viewers, it is very essential to translate them into modern language and pronunciation. And when modern language significance differs from the original text, the process of translation can resemble that of the translating between distinct languages. Also, poetic or ritual language can be translated into either the poetic language accepted by the audience or just into everyday language. In order to maintain the desired intimacy, colloquial language or slang can be translated into the corresponding language at that time of performance. And the dialect used in the play should be translated into the dialect that is familiar to the audience and is associated with the specific social group from that particular region of the country. Finally, when translating archaic language, the key is for the audience to recognize the author's intention of stylizing their language. So in 1985, Susan Bassett also put forward 5 strategies for drama translation. The first one is treating the theater text as a literary work, and the second one is using the essay cultural context as free text. And the third one is translating performability. The fourth one is creating essay words genre in alternative forms. And the last one is a cooperative translation. Alright, and in 2000, Mary he also put forward 3 strategies, categorized 3 strategies. They are addition, omission, and adequacy. So the addition include additional dialogue, stage direction, or things that enhance or expand upon the original text. And for example, in play A Streetcar Named Design, there is a line, I have always depended on the kindness of strangers. And the Chinese translation, the translator added an extra part, as we can see on the later part. So the purpose of this kind of strategy is to provide more context or clarity for the target audience, or to adapt the play to fit the cultural and linguistic norms of the target language. Omission is include cutting or condensing dialogues, removing stage direction, or omitting entire scenes or characters. The purpose is to streamline the play for performance, or to adapt it to fit the time constraints of cultural preference of the target audience. And finally, the adequacy involves making minimal changes to the source text, such as adjusting dialogue or stage directions to better suit the target language or cultural context. And it's aimed to maintain the essence and the meaning of the original text while adapting it to the target language culture. Alright, so the third part will be about our translation experience of Frankenstein. Now let's invite my partner Summer to do this part.
Okay, so after researching the drama translation, now we begin our practice in translating Frankenstein. In the later parts, I will talk about our source text, about its characteristics, the challenges and the strategies we adopted, and some example for further discussion. The original story is first accomplished by Mary Shelley in 1818. The subject is Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus. It was considered the earliest Gothic novel of this genre at that time. And then about 200 years later, the playwright Nick Dear adapted it into a stage play performed in the Royal National Theatre, London, England, featuring Benedict Cumberbatch and John Miller Lee as the double cast of the main protagonist. So the reason we choose this story, it is because it's a very successful adaptation. So we can see the changes of the genre, the plot, and the theme. So about the plot, the original story, Frankenstein, is about a gifted scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who succeeds in giving life to a being of his own creation. However, this is not the perfect specimen he imagined that this will be, but rather a hideous creature who is rejected by Victor and mankind in general. The monster seeks its revenge through murder and terror. So he hunts Victor until the North Pole. So after serious tortures and fight, Victor finally died, and before he told the entire story to the captains. So after the death of Victor Frankenstein, the monster is also very sad and killed himself. So it is a story about the exploration of science, about ambitions of the mankind. So it is basically reflects the attitudes of the mainstream society in the Victoria areas towards their horrors and fraternities to the science progress, to the machine and to the industrialization, and the ethics of creation by something that's not created by God. So it seldom reflected something like beauty and the soul of the creators. So in the modern times, the people tend to deconstruct these stories and retell the story from the position of the creator itself. So in the play Frankenstein, we can witness that the story is begin with the creator, that he's grown up and how he learned knowledge and the emotions, and finally, when he confronted with his creator, he did not kill him, but instead, two of them fight with each other and support each other and to explore things in the future. So it's not Oedipus-like tragedy as the original one. So we choose the 3 representative themes for translation. In our translation, there are some challenges that we might face. And first is the non-standard language produced by the creator, because he is something like a baby and try to learn things from none to something half. And the second one is some dialogues is being too formal, is too literal. And the third, we have to pay attention to the distinctive emotion expression in English and Chinese. So in order to conquer this challenge, we use some strategies. And the first one is performability, and some may call it speakability. It refers to the changes we have to face from text to stage, from rehearsal to live. So the balance of literature and colloquial style is very important, and is also important for every stage play, not only in this one. And the second one is eloquency. It refers to the characteristic of Chinese expressions. It's about an adjustment in lexical and syntax level, so may the Chinese target audience could accept and savor this play more natural and quickly. Now we have some example. In example 1, that we can see the creature speaks non-standard English at the preliminary stage of his study, like need not do bad things, why am I hungry? So instead of saying I don't do bad things, why I am hungry, he used some things that are not familiar with the audience. So after observation, we found all these cases are involved with personal pronouns. As a result, we uniformly translated them into the Chinese character Wa, whose pronunciation is quite similar to the Chinese word Wo. And this translation ensured the performability while achieving a similar effect on the audience in the target language. And in addition, the choice of this Chinese character adds an endearing quality to the creature and reflects his naivety and innocence during the early stages of knowledge acquisition. And in the second example, we can see the main problems we face is repetition. So creator says everything twice, and then in the example 2.3, Agatha says shrubberies twice. So in the translation, we made slight adjustment to this repeated phrase, making them not entirely identical. Because identical might be a powerful features of English drama, but not in Chinese, because we tend to seek diversity in expression. So therefore, to everything will translate into 全部 and 一切, while the two thrashes will translate into data and total respectively. And this adjustment aligns more with how audience of the target language naturally express themselves in everyday conversation. It also allows the actors and actresses to deliver their lines in a more dynamic manner rather than sounding rehearsal and rigid. And for the third example, that we can see that is the very angry expression of the creature. So the scene happens when the creature begins to realize his limits and difference from the Larcey. He begins to think, summarize, raise questions, and feel angry. So the emotion through these complaints is so intense and straightforward. So we can see, you do know, grabs everything, I nothing, learn it all, flies to you on the wind. It seems very simple. But consider from the perspectives of both performability and adequacy, we believe that the four character idioms, which is very unique in Chinese expression, proves to be an appropriate way to convey the tension flow from the simple lines. So we translate it as 一清二楚, 通晓一切, and 一无所知 for substitution. So in the meantime, it flies to you on the wind is also translated into 轻而易举, in order to align with the entire expression, making it more eloquent and indicating the creature's progress in mastering the knowledge. So finally, we can see there's another example also refers to the different style of English and Chinese. In this example, Victor points out the creature is not entitled to make requests of him by saying, you can't have request. If it is literally translating to 你不能有要求, the sense of power and anger Victor would be lost in Chinese. Hence, we change the imperative tone to rhetorical question, 你还配提什么要求, to enhance the performability. And similarly, we made some adjustment to creature's response. Original line, oh, I can, could be translated into, oh, 我能 in Chinese if following the literary translation strategy. But this version lacks the intent, the emotional impact, and assertiveness. So instead, we translate it as, oh, 我有这个权利, conveys a stronger sense of entitlement and emphasizes the creature's assertion of his rights. It also aligns with the performability aspect and ensures that the dialogues resonate with the audience in actual performance. So all in all the works we have done is based on the consideration of how to perform it vivid and well and impressive on the stage. So in our following performance project, we will see if our strategy works well. Let's looking forward to it. Thanks for watching.